told in intimate detail through paintings and words. Jeffrey Brown has the story.
It began during World War I and wouldn't end until the 1970s. The movement of 6 million African Americans from the rural South to the urban North changed America forever. The epic story is the subject of an epic work of art, the Migration series by Jacob Lawrence, himself the son of Southern migrants who studied photographs and news and scholarly accounts before lifting a brush.
The thing about Lawrence is he's deeply read. He has an extraordinary research protocol.
Curator Leah Dickerman has brought together all 60 of Lawrence's small paintings for an exhibition titled One-Way Ticket at New York's Museum of Modern Art. It's a chance to see the entire work, from the hardships of life in the South to the long journey from home, and the new life that awaited, one that included opportunity but also new struggles. Each panel comes with a brief, bare-bones caption.
There's an extraordinary emotional range to this work of art, between scenes of great tenderness and intimacy, an image of saying grace before the most spare and impoverished meal, an image of a woman reading a letter from the South to a child who's listening to her. And then it's cross-cut. And I'm using that cinematic term because I think he thinks cinematically.
You do?
Yes, with images of stark racial injustice.
Jacob Lawrence was an artistic prodigy, just 23 when he began this work in 1940. He was part of the cultural flowering in mid-20th century Harlem, the Harlem Renaissance of writers, musicians, and artists. And the exhibition captures that period through photographs and music. In 1995, Lawrence, who died in 2000, spoke to the NewsHour's Charlene Hunter Gault.
When I did this series, I didn't know who would ever see it. I didn't know if it would ever be seen. I just did it. And I'd like for people to say, well, feel, look, this is me. This is mankind or womankind, now we say. And I would like it to be a universal statement. That's the way I feel.
Universal, but deeply personal. That's how the paintings have been viewed ever since. And now they have a new resonance into contemporary poetry.
Much about the South is unseen or not shown. The painter understands the usefulness of obscenity.
The museum asked 10 poets to respond to individual paintings with a new poem.
The boll weevils Jacob Lawrence painted are little more than silhouettes, but a Southern landowner would have recognized them as symbols of bad luck, bold evil, the money eaters.
Like flames of green, crop-streaked, squash-blossomed color, striped soil, go with your ratchet. Negro who had been part of the soil, now going into and leaving a new life in the urban centers.
Poet Elizabeth Alexander led the project, and she, like the others, has her own personal connections.
In African American history, in African American culture, as a black person myself, we all have some connection to migration at some point in our families. It really was very powerful to think, this is what my mother, my very own mother, she comes from this.
The past has long legs and is heavy, they said, which was a kind of warning. Stay clear of the enormous twisted tree on Tidwell Hill.
Crystal Williams grew up in Detroit. Her father had come from Alabama. She chose perhaps the most harrowing painting in the series, one about lynching. The poem she wrote, Year After Year We Visited Alabama, became a gentle homage to her loving father.
The poem really has to do with the lessons that I think we have lost. My father was truly one of the most gentle people I've ever met. And I understand now as an adult that that gentleness was a choice, that he was choosing, given what he had seen in the South, to live a life in which he looked for connections between people, to practice forgiveness.
Another of the social causes of the migrants leaving was that at times they did not feel safe, or it was not the best thing to be found on the streets late at night. They were arrested at the slightest provocation.
Tyehimba Jess went in a different direction, quoting directly from the caption of one of Lawrence's paintings of black men being arrested.
This painting in particular called me to speak to the fact that the things that my parents left the Southland to escape are still part of this nation's DNA and still are still being dealt with today.
His poem, titled Another Man Done, is a literal layering of words, suggesting the repetition of events through time.
I see a kind of daring vision behind the idea of doing all of these paintings at once and trying to capture that moment. That idea of going from someplace where you are not recognized fully for your human potential and trying to move to a place where you can fully exercise your human capacity.
One-way ticket is on exhibit through September 7th. From the Museum of Modern Art in New York, I'm Jeffrey Brown for the PBS NewsHour.